What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Today we are talking about Season 4, Episode 6, Starship Down. We've got ourselves a very exciting submarine adventure. Gonna be fun to talk about. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Keith. They're not windows. They're escape pods, Keith. They're painted yellow.
God damn.
Welcome, one and all, old
if
viewers.
You know what we mean, you know what we mean.
Yeah,
but
welcome to anybody
most people won't.
Served here from the algorithm. Listen, we had a video blow up for us. I mean, 10,000 views is like
blow up.
Yeah, is a sneeze for some. But we talked about a toy, and let me tell you, Keith, I was saying this to our patrons on the watch along episode at patreon.com/KNM.
Well done.
That I got to see once again the best parts of Star Trek fandom and some of the we get so few views on these videos that we've really curated what I've said, and I mean it, no facetiousness, a wonderful community of supportive people.
It's just our family. It's just family on this show.
Who are educating me. As the whole conceit of our channel is like Keith's shepherding me into my first foray into the Star Trek universe, and it's overwhelming at times. But man, there are some people who are so embedded into the nitty-gritty, the details, that if you make a mistake, woof, they want your badge and phaser tomorrow. So thank you to those who have checked us out. Thank you to those who have followed that over to our main content, which we talked about Deep Space Nine. And welcome back to our old family and friends. I'm so happy to be here to talk about this episode of television that I watched.
Yes. Well, and escape pods, not windows. I can tell you this with, I think, a fair amount of reliability. The people who are very passionate about that, I would say I put very good money that 95% plus of the people who worked on the damn show as an occupation would have no idea. So
yeah, I mean,
I know two of them who are 100% don't know that.
Yeah, it's just like the question becomes, and this goes for all media, right? Do you want to be inclusive of your fandom, or do you want to be exclusive in your fandom? Yeah. And I'm not going to say what's right or wrong. We just have more fun when it's inclusive, right? It's just
no. I'll say what's right and wrong. Inclusive. We're a family. We are. It is important to us. Inclusivity is a big.
Let's get into the kava root of the story, Keith.
Oh my goodness, yes. But before we do that, we have to deal with another type of indiscretion, and that is the episode indiscretion and what you thought of it. Some interesting thoughts here. Joshua Cronin gives it an 87. Jason Moe gives it an 86. Delusions at Noon with a 90. JD with an 88. Harry Pothead down with a 65. Not like in the romance episodes, which I agree 99 out of 100 times. Worf's Boot Shivs gives it a 90. Kevin Miles with a 90. And we have two super thanks. YouTube viewer writes, gives it a 69, that's what she said, and says this was an okay episode. 69 out of 100. Self-sealing stem bolts. The duo's romantic chemistry was very good, but pretty much every supporting character's acting was subpar, in my opinion. It also didn't help that, like with the Meridian episode, it was clear they were not going to change the status quo with the show going forward. That's a good point. When canon is God, characters can only have romances with members of the regular cast. I think this episode could have used a B-plot. Maybe the writers intended on the artificial wormhole to be the B-plot, but the technobabble was boring, and I cannot recall them even bringing it up, the artificial wormholes again, which is wasted potential. Agreed. The first time I saw this episode, I was impressed by how bold they were to have a lesbian romance in 1995. The second time I saw the episode, I had the context of all of Deep Space Nine, and I realized this episode was a continuity breaker. Dax is always breaking this Trill taboo, and this is the only episode where it matters, because it was the episode where the Star Trek team wanted to virtue signal their social justice credentials. This is an intentional allegory for homosexuality. I do not believe for a second that we're not doing a show about lesbians, we're doing a show about Trills. I applaud them for not hanging a lampshade on it. But if they say the episode has nothing to do with lesbianism, they are lying or they are childishly naive. I have thoughts on that. We'll talk about it later. Dax's relationship with Ben Sisko was not sexual, but it is intimate, and one would think that this is a violation of the Trill taboo. Agreed. Since they are not supposed to get too close to family members or lovers. Way back in season 1, Dax Jadzia was willing to let herself and the Dax symbiote die in order to protect the honor of Curzon's affair partner. In Season 2, Blood Oath, Jadzia endangers herself and the Dax symbiote while breaking Federation rules because of her blood oath with the Klingons. Note, Klingon blood oaths have the same weight as marriage vows. Without going into spoilers, they violate this Trill taboo many times in future episodes with zero repercussions. The Trill taboo only matters when Star Trek team wants to construct an allegory for homosexuality. Unrelated note as to what the Klingons dream about, I'm guessing they dream about things such as kittens and puppies frolicking in fields of daisies, which is why Worf does not want to share his dreams. I love that. That's no canon for me. I support gay rights, but same-sex PDAs make me uncomfortable. Though, heterosexual PDAs make me uncomfortable too, so it's not the P part, it's the DA part. I was going to say, like, we're going to have no, you know what? Totally fair. And you know what? I agree. I'm not a big DA person myself.
Time and a place. Time and a place.
I mean, sure. I mean, there are certain people I'm like, yeah, go for it. But like in general, it depends on what you mean by DA. Are you holding hands? Great, that's wonderful. That's adorable. Are you like sloppy tongue kissing? That's gross.
Well, I don't. It's a slippery slope. If we're trying to make like actual social commentary, I don't want to make jokes. So, yeah, do what the hell you want.
All right. Well, fair enough.
But I mean, there's a lot. I mean, like when it comes to public, the whole point of where I think you can start to draw lines. I am a believer that like, there's some sort of when things get a little overt. I feel like regardless of your sexuality, like homosexuality or heterosexuality, what the kids should see and what is appropriate there's a line of taste, I think, that we could discuss, but that has nothing to do with your right to express your...
100%. Let me be very clear. Like, the genders of the folks doing it have absolutely no bearing whatsoever in whether I find it uncomfortable. And I also don't think, for me, it's not about kids at all. It's about... It's just gross.
Well, Keith, and I do not want to derail the episode, but just like...
Too late.
Let me get where you put your flag. I'm going to really put you in the spot here. Where do you put your flag?
Okay.
When we're talking about Star Trek specifically.
Okay.
How do you... And as a writer, I ask you this. Okay. How do you split the difference between using sci-fi to force representation, make it uncomfortable if necessary or not, versus what some could criticize as virtue signal?
Well, I think I don't think it's virtue signaling, first off. I disagree with the characterization that it's virtue signaling. I believe that it is done with a purpose, right? It is done, whether you want to say you have a political purpose or like an ideology that you're trying to put out, I think yes. I think they are actively trying to foster empathy and put and represent in the positive sense of the word, to show the world that these are people and they exist and that they have the same feelings that you do, and try to help foster empathy, which I think is the most effective persuasion, right? I honestly, the most possible way to persuade somebody is through empathy, through personal stories, through like, I know a person who went through this, I know a person who was that, and I can put myself in their shoes. So I think that that's actually one of the purposes of sci-fi, right? It's not something that you add to sci-fi. I think it's inherent to sci-fi. Sci-fi, without having some sort of a social commentary, social belief system, we're trying to give you some new information, a different perspective. it's not really sci-fi. It's just sort of like people walking around with pew-pews, right? And like it's not always like these hot button political things, right? It can be an allegory for any number of stuff, from personal emotional feelings, how you feel about your dad, how you whatever it is. Like that's kind of the purpose of sci-fi. So, while I do believe that like virtue signaling does exist, I don't put it in that category whatsoever. Not this episode.
Yeah, and I think through the lens of like the 90s, the internet wasn't as easily accessible to most folks. So that conversation, if people had feelings and wanted to deal with them or talk about them, and even argue the virtue signaling versus interesting commentary to discuss socially, almost is forced around the table and in the home, which is where it should be happening.
Well, and the difference between virtue signaling and storytelling is the purpose of is the objective of persuasion, right? Virtue signaling is like you're throwing out the bat signal to people who are already on your side, and just saying like, yeah, I'm the good guy, right? But the purpose of this is to persuade, is to open minds, is to get people to think about this in a different way through a sci-fi lens. And so I think that as a writer, as a fan, like that's important. That is a part of Star Trek, right? It's in the DNA of Trek, right from the very, very beginning. The first shot of the first episode ever. Persuasion through representation was part of the objective of the whole damn show. All right, so Sans Deity, also with said super tip, says something I find really interesting about this episode is that most of the emotional resonance stems from seeing this episode in the context of its time. For 1995, showing two women kissing was courageous, and it's hard to separate my feelings for this episode outside of that perspective. Rejoined says something about the pliability of love and identity that still rings true today. But if this episode were made today, a lot of it is lost, and you're left with not the greatest of episodes in a lot of ways. The trill rules are inconsistent, and the science mumbo jumbo isn't compelling. Agreed on all counts. Everything seems thrown together and just to create this meeting and the taboo behind it. You also know that they're not going to stay together in the end, so the progression of the narrative is fairly predictable. That said, my rating does not reflect the importance of the episode, does reflect the importance of the episode and the questions it raises. 83 self-sealing stem bolts. This episode also has the best behind-the-scenes story I've heard for a TV show. It's most likely apocryphal, but I'm still going to pretend this happened. Apparently, someone wrote into the show complaining about the kiss, saying he watched the show with his kids and did not want them to see that. Some PA or something wrote back asking if he would have minded if one of the girls shot the other one. When the dad says no, the PA said he had some strange priorities if murder wasn't as bad as kissing. Perfect 5-7 response. 5 out of 7? Anyway, yeah.
I've read that.
I've heard that
well.
story,
yeah.
And it's a great story, and I think also important.
Yeah, I guess it's worth noting too that I had potentially erroneously mentioned that this episode was not aired in some southern affiliates, and JD had let us know he couldn't find anything to corroborate that, nor could I, except I might have misattributed it to a quote I read from Ira Stephen Bear, who said, I think it's been a while since we've been banned in the South. Let's write this episode. That's not a direct quote. I paraphrased, but yeah, I think that's what I
believe they may have been referring to some affiliates in the South refusing to air the interracial kiss in the 60s, and perhaps they were trying to reference that.
Look,
all right.
I think where Keith and I come down is, even now in the future, we commend their effort in the past, regardless of where on the spectrum of success it falls. Yeah, absolutely. Like I think all the criticisms of the episode are very valid about the consistency of the rules and the B story or whatever. But the great part is, the important part of the episode, everyone just is on board because their emotional journey is the
point. And I think, I guess, to speak about whether or not, that this is an episode about lesbians or not.
Uh-oh. I sent the Chiron early, Keith. I thought you had.
Oh, you sure did.
I thought you were wrapping up. I thought you were wrapping up.
It's fine. I should be wrapping up, but I'm not. And I think that yes and no, right? Obviously, we're doing an allegory here about homosexuality. No question. Obviously. But I don't think the love story itself is specific to lesbianism. It's just two people in love. And I think that's the point that they're making. Like if you know lesbian relationships, it may apply, it may not apply, but it's really just two people who happen to be both female, not getting into the best part to me is
they happen to be
story.
Female now, but the relationship that they are
wasn't
reliving
then.
Sort of.
Right. So the out of context allegory obviously is important and obviously is there and intentional and is part of the show. And I don't think anybody's pretending that that's not true. But in the context of the story, it's not. So a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. All right, let's talk about Starship Down, shall we? Before our show goes down.
Yep. Where's the button? There it is.
You were so on board, and then I screwed you up. Usually, you're the one who messes that up. This one was entirely
at the end of the
me
day,
this time.
It got screwed up, which is the important thing.
That's right. In the larger context of the show, we all know it got screwed up, but it doesn't really matter. All right, so Starship Down aired on November 6th, 1995. Our top song continued to be...
Ooh, fantasy baby.
Okay, there you go. Thanks for the full belt.
You're welcome, buddy.
Here we are on a Wednesday. Love it. The top movie, interesting, continued to be Get Shorty in week 3. 3 weeks, 9 million. That's all it took. Mike, what was on TV tonight?
Oh, Keith, well, I'm looking it up absolutely right now because I hadn't done it previously. I can tell you.
Well, I'll tell you what.
No, I got you.
On Voyager that
November
night.
5th?
Right.
November 5th?
November 6th.
Oh, okay. Why don't you tell me what's on Voyager?
Well, Voyager was airing the episode Tattoo.
Not the episode.
The episode Tattoo. Woof. Well-intentioned? Not great. Less said about that, the better. We'll get to it when we do Keith and Mike watch Star Trek Voyager in like 5 years.
No, well, I'll tell you, Keith, that, oh God, now I know why my computer didn't want to look it up. Your Dallas Cowboys defeated the then Philadelphia Eagles 34-12. Luckily, fast forward, the Dallas Cowboys suck now, so that's great. Or at least they shouldn't suck, but they do, which is even better.
Except they won.
Yeah, but come on. It's not like we lost to the Jets. And Chicago Hope, that was happening. From Soup to Nuts, High Society, which was a show that happened called Whose Son Is It Anyway? And Murphy Brown's still airing new episodes. Bad Company, Beverly Hills 90210, Earthquake Weather, Looking Around, nothing else exciting, except for... This is interesting. In the House, which was an NBC show that aired after The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, was airing an episode called Sister Act, the episode. So I'd be interested to know if that has any tie to the movie, which I think came out around this time, didn't it?
I think it was around this time. It was huge.
1992 was Sister Act.
They did a Sister Act takeoff for the
Sister Act
for the episode.
2 came out in 1993. Sister Act 2 was released the following year, Keith.
Yeah, they did not mess around.
Wow, that is crazy.
They knew what they had.
She was like, "Oh, happy day! Run the sequel!"
The credits are rolling and they're already typing.
If you haven't, I've mentioned this on the multiple podcasts. If you haven't gone back and watched Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit recently, do yourself a favor. It is so 90s, it can't even handle itself. It's so 90s. Yeah,
I don't think I've seen either one of them since they first came out. I think I watched them at my grandparents' house, and that was it. I saw the Broadway production, but
we need Whoopi on Broadway.
We do need Whoopi on Broadway. She's done Broadway. All right. This one I've been looking forward to all week.
Okay.
In the hard news, and this is going to involve some participation from you, Mike, because we are going to discuss the OJ trial has happened. OJ has been acquitted, but maybe a little bit murdered some folks. And so the mafia is going to step in and fix it by hiring a pro wrestler to kill OJ Simpson in the ring in a cage match.
That's so batshit that it doesn't feel as batshit anymore, knowing like what actually transpired to get him into prison and then out of prison. My favorite thing about OJ now is that he loves to give his hot takes on current murder trials. He'll like release videos and be like, people are really curious what I have to say. Like, yes, because we know you killed people.
Yes, but I want to know.
Okay,
we can't just walk away from this. They're gonna hire a pro wrestler to kill OJ in a cage match on WrestleMania, which means I as a wrestling fan that I know that you are. And keep in mind, this is 1995.
Okay.
Who is the wrestler you put in there to be in a shoot fight, which means a real fight, to fatally take out O.J. Simpson in 95?
Listen. Initially, you want to think like a badass, like a Stone Cold.
Stone Cold wasn't even the ringmaster at this point. Stone Cold was the Hollywood Blonde in 95, I believe.
Listen, I have three thoughts.
Okay.
One would be someone who had been screwed, and if I'm not mistaken, around this time, Bret Hart, the screw job.
A couple years later, but yeah. Bret Hart could definitely.
So you would think the excellence of execution could execute him, right? But what about somebody who does the job, right? Somebody who's known for screwing people or turning on their partners. So you got Shawn Michaels, I think, would be a great option.
But could he physically do it? I don't think. I think he could. Best wrestlers ever wrestled in the ring, in my opinion, but I don't think he could physically pull it off.
Yes, this is why, Keith. I think where I come down on this, and listen, I'm not missing the fact that they chose to just blow up the aspect ratio of an actual spinning top to make that the UFO in this Photoshop picture.
Yeah, the B story here is excellent as well.
But I think at the end of the day, and if I'm not mistaken, let me look at my list here because I pulled it up. Yes, in fact, he won 1996. So the following year, Keith, won the WWE title in Survivor Series in New York. Is Psycho Sid, a huge presence who is psycho. I feel like would be a great option. As champion, Sid. He would be able to pull the match in and then, Psycho kill him.
I think that's a good choice. Here's who I would put up. I would put up Vader.
Yeah, I like him.
Because I think he would have the physical ability to do it.
He'd squish him good.
He'd squish him good. Bam Bam Bigelow's a good choice.
Mankind.
He had just wrestled Lawrence Taylor at that point. All good. Jimmy Snuka, he's already murdered somebody. Yeah.
What about Hacksaw Jim Duggan? Just get his board and put like a nail in the middle. And just
Hacksaw could totally do it. All right, well,
and plead, like insanity. Well, Psycho Sid would have the insanity plea. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, or all you have to do is have McMahon, hand the cops a briefcase full of cash, just like he did for Jimmy Snuka.
Everybody was so roided out at that time. Literally any person could have done it.
Yes. All right. So, folks, which wrestler would you have battle O.J. Simpson to the death?
Yeah, and then after the match, release a book entitled "If I Did It."
If I wrestled him. All right.
Okay, that was fun.
Well, okay. All right. So this episode, for all the people who are not wrestling people, I apologize.
Yeah.
All right. So
come on. Who amongst us doesn't love a little wrestling?
Everybody's at least compelled by it. Whether or not you love it or not, it is compelling. All right, so Starship Down was directed by Alexander Singer, who has directed many things before, and written by David Mack and John J. Ordover. This is the only episode that they did, except for It's Only a Paper Moon, which is a fantastic episode coming up many seasons ahead.
Isn't that
Which
Yip
means it
Harburg? Didn't Yip Harburg write that song?
I think so. Only a paper moon flying over a cardboard sky, but I wouldn't be make-believe if I believed in you.
Yip Harburg and Billy Rose. Nailed it.
Woo! Look at us. I mean, look, this show, we have range. We went from wrestling to Yip Harburg within 15 seconds.
He's the lyricist for The Wizard of Oz, for those who are
And
wondering.
nobody wants either one of those subjects.
No.
Everyone's here for Star Trek.
Chapters, baby. Come on.
You know what we're here for? Trivial trivia. That's what we're here for.
Ah.
Now, Keith, waste your time.
With what?
With trivial trivia. I think, at some point, in addition to the out-of-context videos, we need a compilation of all the frustrated noises that Mike makes searching for buttons.
I got the button machine to make everything easier. I should just click.
All right, trivia. This episode was won. This is actually an important benchmark for the nerdy people like us. This episode is one of the very first Star Trek episodes to make extensive use of CGI for their ships.
Noticed that, yeah.
The Defiant, the Jem Hadar fighter, and the atmospheric probe in the clouds were all created CGI. So I think I mentioned at some point, Deep Space Nine is going to transfer to fully digital ships from models. And this is when that clicks over, which allows, I love the physical models. I think they will always look better, but this is going to allow us to do so much more, especially with the battle sequences coming up. Like it's a completely different ballgame when we switch to digital. Also, this episode, James Cromwell comes in and plays Hannock. In this episode, he had previously played two different characters on The Next Generation. Prime Minister
He's in one of the
Nayrock.
movies too, right?
It hasn't happened yet, but he's a very important character in Trek lore. He was in The Hunted and Yeglum Shek in Birthrights Part 1 and 2, where he initially met Worf on Deep Space Nine. Because it is a Deep Space Nine Next Gen crossover that we should probably do for the patrons at some point, especially now that Worf is here, because it's an important Worf story as well, and James Cromwell is in it. But of course, Cromwell is best known for his portrayal as the famous Zefram Cochrane, the inventor of the warp drive in Star Trek First Contact, which
also
he would reprise.
lead defense counsel for O.J. Simpson.
There it is, yeah, and many, many things. So he also appeared on Star Trek Enterprise as Zefram Cochrane. As a little Easter egg there, Voyager's the only one he didn't do in this era. And lastly, Major Kira's baseball cap that she wears in the very end is from the Pittsburgh PAs. 1900 to 1905 local Negro professional baseball league, the Homestead Grays. Great little detail there.
Cool.
And I feel like that had to have been an Avery Brooks choice. But Pennsylvania League, the Homestead Grays. Great little detail. Love it. You know who else I love, Mike?
Well, Keith, before you do that, I got a little bit of trivia for you.
Okay.
Because, not really trivia, but I still skim through the old...
Boo.
I know you told me not to, but what I've been doing is skimming for because sometimes they have sketches and schematics of different things that I think is fun. So we actually have one this week, and this is the torpedo.
Oh, yeah.
It's when the Jem Hadar torpedo pops through the window. So this is one of the initial sketches with some notes you can see. Before a sketch is approved, it's submitted to key personnel. The director wanted the torpedo to glow. So
Which it did, which was really cool.
It was cool, yeah. I have some problems with that whole beat, but we'll get to it. So there you go.
All right.
Thought I'd pop it in for you.
All right, I like that beat. The only problem I have with that beat is that they did it again on Voyager. It was still worth it, because that was like one of the best episodes of Voyager ever.
Keith, you know what we do every week, but we're going to continue to do it?
What's that?
Let's thank our patrons.
Yeah, we do.
We'd like to thank them by name, and I will do so now. Brian, Kimball Beersock, Casey Clark, Jason Moe, Joshua Crone and Andrew Hayes, Jorge Naveau, and The Mysterious, Worf's big old boof shivs.
Boof shifts?
Well, that is a different podcast. Charles Babbage, Richard Cole,
Judge?
Richard Coleman. Do you know that in no, I'll forget it. Richard Coleman, Harry Potter, Peter Bank, Benke, Peter Bank.
Who doesn't boof every once in a while?
Peter B. Sierra Productions.
I like beer!
Everybody else, we love you so much. We really appreciate you. Do you know that as he was finishing, right before he started shooting on Back to the Future, Michael J. Fox was doing a movie called Teen Wolf, which you gotta go watch. It's another.
I've seen Teen Wolf many times.
His best friend, his female best friend in that movie, is nicknamed Boof.
Boof, really?
Boof, yeah. And it's never left my mind because I was like, who was like, well, let's call her Boof.
Boof.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't seen that movie since the 80s.
Oh,
but
it's so good, dude. Such a great rewatch. Yeah, such a great. The second one, Michael J. Fox was like, no thanks, I'm a superstar now. So they got Jason Bateman to be in the sequel.
But I mean, Jason Bateman's great too. Also, Ben Affleck's first film appearance
is in what? Teen Wolf?
Is in Teen Wolf. He was one of the basketball players.
Oh my god.
I'm not even sure he even had a line.
Oh, that's awesome. Was he the bad guy? Anyway, different podcast.
No, he was like a nobody. All right. Anyway, our guest stars this week include the aforementioned James Cromwell as Hanuk, F.J. Rio as Enrique Muniz, Jay Baker as Stevens, Sarah Mornell as Carson. I think it's time, mercifully, to hop into the screening room, shall we?
35 minutes.
I like beer! Boof! Boof! Sorry, Ann, that was very loud in your headphones.
The dulcet boof sounds.
No, this is bad. All right, so in our teaser, Holy Digital Ships, Batman, we see a new ship meeting up with the Defiant in the Gamma Quadrant. We're meeting with the Karima about problems with the treaty that we set up in the Search. Remember the Karima, Mike?
I do, yeah.
Nice. We
met them when we first met the Jem Hadar, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. They were the intermediaries, sort of. So the Ferengi are intermediaries themselves, and between the Federation and the Karima, to make it look like the Federation is not dealing directly with the Dominion member. James Cromwell tells Cisco that, you know what, the Ferengi have been skimming all of the profit off in junk fees. They might as well be Ticketmaster. Worf is on the bridge. He is not pleased with the results of a battle drill. He's kind of a dick about it. Meanwhile, Kira and Dax are sitting in the back at a new, breakfast nook on the bridge we hadn't seen before. But they can tell that Worf's being a pain in the ass. And Kira tells Dax that she's fasting for a Bajoran festival celebrating the anniversary of the arrival of the emissary. And she assumes that Cisco scheduled these negotiations to avoid being there as the subject of the festival.
The festival?
The festival. The Prophet's Festival?
The Pope's Festival? Who doesn't want to go?
Well, he's not the Pope. That's Wynn.
Oh,
Wynn is
right.
the Pope.
He's the, I guess, head cardinal.
He's more of like a half deity. He's like a saint.
Oof. You don't wonder. I wouldn't want that responsibility.
Well, yeah, I don't think he does either. But as we're talking about Bajoran religion, 2 Jem Hadar warships show up on sensors. Uh-oh. In Act 1, Cromwell goes to the bridge and says they're going to punish us for dealing with the Federation.
You know what a face is, Keith? Face is when you can completely obscure a human being's face with makeup and bad wig. Or a good wig in this. It is a good wig. It just it's a lot of wig. It's a boof, if you will. Speaking of, yeah. And still immediately recognize who the human being is. That's face right there.
That's face. Yeah. He wants to surrender to the Jem Hadar, and maybe they'll let him keep his ship But Cisco's like, nah, we're not turning you over because that would involve horrible distress for everybody. The battle begins with no warning. The Karma ship tries to peace out, and the Jem Hadar chase, and so does the Defiant. So they go into the atmosphere.
No. They don't just go, Keith. I don't undersell it. They clearly tell Cisco. Actually, they don't tell him. He says it. He's like, yeah, the ship wasn't designed for this, and there's no guarantee we can actually follow them, and it might put everybody at great peril. But you know what? Let's go!
Hell yeah! Come on, Cisco's not gonna turn down a chance to
Cisco
chase
loves
down.
to put everybody's life at risk, instantaneously with zero to little consideration.
Well, look, he is a warrior. He is a diplomat. These are important. You got to make sacrifices.
But yeah. Well, it brings up a nit I have, but we'll get there.
Okay.
A lot of nits.
So they go into the atmosphere of a gas giant. There are crazy winds and weather. It's dangerous for all of the ships. The imaging system fritzes out immediately, and they also have no sensors. Cisco sends Cromwell back to the mess hall before he pulls out the torpedoes.
It's like that video game we played, Keith, where like the most important people of the episode were like, go wait in the conference room, remember?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a diplomatic mission. You don't want him seeing all the classified pew-pews.
That's a good point.
So, Worf explains they have no cloak, no torpedoes, and phasers will have to be targeted manually. Luckily, this is the type of thing that Kira did all the time in the occupation. And she suggests using a version of radar, a Tetrion echolocation. Very smart.
The Batman principle.
The Batman principle. But every time they use it, they're going to be spotted. So they have to send up and then disappear and go somewhere else.
Sounds very familiar. It feels like a plot point a tactic we've used before.
Well, I mean, the submarine battle idea we've certainly done
Strange
many
New
times.
Worlds, original series. We watched like
so like it's Balance of Terror, it's Wrath of Khan, it's a lot of different things have been like this, but it's not unsurprising this would happen a lot in the you're out there in submarines essentially. So in the mess hall, Quark throws Rom under the bus for the ticketing fees with the Karma, but Cromwell isn't having it. On the bridge, they spot another ship on the radar, but they don't know who it is. It's the Karma, which is good, but then they're attacked by two Jem Hadar ships. The Defiant gets nailed, and impulse power goes down. They start losing altitude, and as they lower, the pressure gets higher, because we're doing our submarine allegory here. They've got 6 minutes before the hull buckles. And Cisco gets the idea to load quantum torpedoes into probes, i.e. we're making a heat-seeking torpedo, essentially. O'Brien tries to calm down one of his engineers. It's not what they do down here. Then there's a hull breach. They need to seal off the deck, but Bashir, Dax, and a bunch of extras are down there, and they've got 30 seconds to get out before they seal the hull.
Yeah, I immediately clocked like 3 people I thought were going to easily bite it this episode. Like you have a nondescript female on the bridge, and you've got the two nerds down below, and I was like, oh, they're all going to die.
Right, we lost 2 red shirts, but a lot of the folks survived because it was important for the Worf story.
Yeah, in this episode, if you got a line, you lived.
That's right. That's right. That's why you got to, even if
One
it's
guy
under
did
5.
get gassed in the face at some, I don't know if I got a screenshot or not, so I don't know if he's dead, but he did get a pretty good blast of gas in the face. Let's go. Just go.
No, that's good. I have a song about that. It's called Oops, You Farted.
Good.
And you didn't say excuse me. That's written by my 5-year-old nephew.
It's really
here
good,
on
too.
YouTube. Just search for it. Anyway, the force field fails, but Jadzia is still in there. We've got a hull breach. Cisco orders Bashir to seal in the bulkhead, but he does so with himself on Jadzia's side. They go into a closet or something, and Bashir locks them in. And now they've lost contact with the bridge. On the bridge, Cisco thinks he's just killed Dax and Bashir. And that's the face he makes when he does that. Man, I would not want to be a wartime commander.
Nobody barely thought about.
Well, but like, basically, he has a choice, right? There's a hull breach. The force fields have failed.
Yeah, at this point, yes, they made a tough choice. It's 5 minutes ago. They didn't have to chase that ship down there.
Well, but I think they did diplomatically, right? So, like, if we have the Prime Minister of Canada, and we're meeting them, and then, you know, somebody starts messing with the Prime Minister of Canada who's having a meeting with us, we can't just be like, good luck with that. We're going.
Yeah, you're right. But here's, I guess, it's time. I gotta air my.
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
So, you know, in the United States government, which is pretty effed up, you know, for all intents and purposes.
What?
We at least
We're
have.
doing great.
What do
as
they
I'm
call
watching
it?
them try to have a speaker.
What do they call it? The line of succession or the
line of succession?
Yeah.
Yes.
At least that makes sense, right? Like, we have these people who take over if the person dies. Like, when we are let's say we were to send troops to Israel right now, or right.
Yeah.
What we're not going to do is load up all our best people in our line of succession here, and stick them in the plane over, right? It's just like every time we get on the Defiant for a mission, we bring all our best people. So if he's got to make these decisions, he makes these decisions whether we should go after that ship or not. The risk isn't just we lose some crew members, it's we lose all of our best people. Chief Science,
I don't want our
Chief
main
Medical.
cast to be involved in what happens.
I understand why they do it for television, but it's a little weird, right?
Well, but it's not though, because
so
you
who do we got?
realize
So if we all go down in this mission, what do we got back at Deep Space Nine? We got Nog, we got Jake, which actually, to be honest, not bad. Odo's still there, right?
Odo's there.
So that would be the new show.
But you're thinking that that Deep Space Nine is the Federation. It's not. None of these people are that important in the big scheme of the Federation. It's like, you know, yeah, they're a big deal. Like if you're watching MASH, right? They're a big deal on the show, but they're just one of 1,000 different ships. They're one of
All right, sure. You heard it here first, folks. Keith doesn't think the cast of Deep Space Nine is important. There you go.
They're
Book
important to me.
Book it.
But
put it on the internet, comment about it. Windows.
Those aren't windows, god damn it. All right. We're punchy today.
I thought for sure this woman was gonna bite it.
She's in a red shirt, you know she's gonna die. But anyway, but the power comes back on and they resume the search for the Karma.
So the 6 minutes is over now.
Yes, they're 6
that.
minutes if we don't get power back up to protect the stuff. So in the mess hall, Quark and Cromwell keep negotiating. Quark decides to appeal to his greed instead of his integrity, and that doesn't work either.
Actually, I thought this was a good conversation, a good philosophical debate between free market capitalism and, I guess, an idealized
socialism.
Yeah.
Yes, but also I also liked in here watching Quark try different tactics. He's like, let's try this. I'm gonna, and I'm gonna try to be like, oh, I'm reputable, and deny what he did. Then he's gonna be like, no, you're bad too, right? Mm-hmm. We're both bad, right? And then he continues to try a whole bunch of different things, which I think is really clever. And it's Quark working at the height of his intelligence. Mm-hmm. He's trying A, he's trying B, he's trying C.
Yeah, it's easy to misread this, I think, as the Ferengi are bumbling and or just greed focused, but that is not accurate at all. And I think that the layers here, his strategic layers, actually further exemplify the sort of intellect and whatever I'm trying to say.
He's got a lot of ways to skin a kava root. Mm-hmm. All right, so we begin the hunt for Red October. They shut down everything for silent running. So they're going to send out a heat-seeking torpedo, essentially, in the probe, which is a good idea, but if it doesn't find the Jem Hadar ship, it might turn right back around and hit them. So also, it might hit the Karma ship, we don't know. But they shoot it anyway, and are immediately attacked by the Jem Hadar ships. They blow the crap out of the Defiant, but the torpedo works and destroys one of them, leaving one Jem Hadar ship alive. However, things are much worse. Engineering is blown up, and O'Brien thinks everybody on the bridge is dead. Yikes. Luckily, they're not in Act 3, but there are 2 dead and no power or communication. So we did lose a couple people on the bridge, just not the ones with lines. Sisko is knocked down and out, and Kira is frantically trying to help him. He's got a head injury, a concussion, and there are no medics. Also, maybe a good argument for seatbelts on the bridge. We're not going to get that till Nemesis. Worf tells Kira to keep him awake and heads to the
Concussion protocol. There's only one rule, Keith.
In the 90s, that's all we understood. Just stay awake.
Stay awake. Brain bleed. Potential brain bleed. At least I liked that they made it potentially that serious, because usually you're like, well, why can't they just like light beam fix them? Because light beam can like fix your organs internally, but it can't help your headache. But like a brain bleed, you don't want to mess with that. I liked that.
And it's also a good opportunity to have one of our heroes not be sort of omnipotent with the information that they have, because frequently on Star Trek, like, everybody is like a genius at everything, and Kira's like, I don't know shit about medicine. Like, I don't know what to do here. And I think that,
but clearly she's had to triage before if she's been on these.
She's had to triage, but like she can't fix a brain bleed, right? She can, like, she can rub some dirt in a broken leg, but she can't do the brain bleed, which makes sense. And she's frightened. The double weight of possibly losing her friend and the emissary at the same time is really heavy for her. And this starts, I think, the most interesting part of this episode is Kira's journey here. Meanwhile, Julian and Dax are trapped, but at least they have power. Everywhere else is flooded with the gas, and they're running out of air. Dax says, "Thanks for rescuing me." Quark and the Karama guy also keep talking. Quark tries to then call him a hypocrite. He says, "Nope, we have a determined set of values based on the materials of the of what the thing is."
I think someone might be at my door.
Go find out. Quark says this whole idea is too antiseptic and boring. This is like full-on capitalism, socialism kind of an idea, just directly, which is interesting. Worf then arrives in engineering and starts bigfooting around. He's not really reading the room and kind of being a dick.
I mean, the stakes are very high in his defense.
But I think that's exactly why what he's doing is nonsense. He's yelling at a guy for the layout of a monitor. And like, yes, I see the value of what you're going at, but like, the ship's kind of on fire and we're about to die. Like, I prefer my email to be on the left.
Okay, maybe it could be a little more focused. But O'Brien's idea is like, let's give them all PTO to really think about it.
PTO?
Like pay time off. Right? Like, let's send him to a yoga retreat. And
No. He's not saying that. He's not saying that at all. In fact, the message of how engineers work, I've resonated with so well in this episode. I was like, yes, I feel seen by this. I totally get it. We'll get into it.
You just gotta pet Keith's head every once in a while and tell him he's doing a good job.
No. You need to give me autonomy to figure it out and do it my way. Right.
And then as you're walking out of the room, go, nerd!
You can call me a nerd, but
Worf wanted to yell nerd so many times. Nerd!
Tell me the objective, then get the fuck out of the way and let me figure out the best way to do it. That is the only way I work.
Yeah, maybe for O'Brien, but I've never even seen these nerds before.
But they're engineers. He's saying that all engineers think this way.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Anyway, on the bridge, Kira is babbling about shift rotations, trying to keep Sisko awake. But she's having a hard time talking about anything other than work. Because he's the emissary. And, she points out, I don't know if I wrote it down later, but points out that, like, she feels like he's always kept her at a bit of a distance because she sees him as, like, this semi-deity figure.
We have talked. I mean, I think it's important, and I do like it in this episode. But we have talked about this before, right? Early on in the emissary days.
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit. Yeah, but I think it's interesting to check in later, and years later, there's still this remove. There's still this distance and discomfort in their relationship because of this that has not gone away with familiarity. Which is, I also think it's good storytelling, because usually on Trek, we would be like, oh, this is weird. And by the end of the episode, we've figured it out. Let's drink some prune juice. And you know what? They haven't figured it out. It's still weird. It's still a little uncomfortable. And there are people in your life who, like, we should be friends. We should be really close, but it always feels awkward between us. And I know I have people like that in my life. And I can always put my finger on, like, why aren't we closer? We should be closer. But sometimes it's just things that make it weird. And sometimes you can talk about it, sometimes you can't. So she decides to tell Sisko an old Bajoran fable about kava root farmers. And every time they talk about food, the Bajorans must have the worst food in history. It's like a running gag. Every time they bring up Bajoran food, I want to gag.
I read a really cool quote from Nana here in regards to this monologue, which really give it a little bit of context for me, in which she says she thinks about her experience, not just with her relationship with Ben, but with just what she's been through in her life. And she's like, I don't think that Kira is particularly having in possession of a good sense of humor. And so when she's put into this situation where she needs to diffuse, where she needs to come up with like a quippy anecdote, it is not her strong suit, right? So she's really struggling in this moment until she can just be like, F it, I'm gonna talk about what I'm really dealing with. Like, she just kind of monologues her struggle, which ends up being a little more easy for her, which I thought was a really cool insight into her as an actress and how she got through kind of, that story's a little clunky, I think we could all agree. But she's like, well then it's almost as if she was saying, she did not say this, but I'm fitting it in, her saying, I got a bit of clunky dialogue. How do you make it work? Well, I'm going to make it work through character and saying, she doesn't have a great sense of humor. She's not a good middle at a dinner party, Yeah. So this is how I would stumble over it.
I think that's really astute. And I think that, this is part of why Nana is such a good actor. And because part of why the writing on the show is good, because you never write a character who doesn't have a good sense of humor. Right? Everybody's supposed to be quippy and fun or whatever, but there are people in the world who don't. Our social circle, not so much, because we're all desperate, funny people who are, just desperate to get a laugh and validation constantly. But if you go into the real world, there are people who just aren't funny and don't try to be funny.
Well, listen, the pandemic taught you that, I'm sure. If you have a bunch, if you don't know any artists, or if you do have a lot, I'm sure people watching our show probably know some artists or people in the arts, I'll say.
Or are.
Yeah. Play Jackbox with them, and then go play Jackbox with some people in a different circle, like, I don't know, that work.
With normal people?
And you'll know quickly the difference between sense of humor scopes.
God, that is such a good way to put that. Yes. Jackbox with my family and my friends.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, that we could never post most of what is put there. And it is like,
I had that experience because Jen had some friends over who were in a different universe, right? And we all played Jackbox. And within like 2 games, I realized, I have to completely change my human sensibilities to even get through this experience with these people, because A, they're not funny, and B, they are not going to get this. So I have to just be different.
This is way too much.
Yes. At least God has granted me the ability to understand when I need to just throttle back.
You're at like an 85, you need to be at a 7.
I wasn't even bringing the good stuff.
No. Oh, yeah. Anyway. 100%. So poor. But here's the thing, Kira, I think she would find the nonsense funny, but she just doesn't have the mind to like come up with it.
But when she starts to get into her feels, right?
Right. That's
She's
where the
able to
depth is.
communicate
That's what the
there,
connection is. Yeah, her punchline would be like trauma. Which would also be
Is it
our
time to cry?
punchline too.
Is it time to cry? Did someone say cry? Do you need me to cry and openly weep?
Which, when you really get down to it, right?
Yeah, it's an opportunity for Nana to weep.
But it's the same. But it's coming from the same place.
Mm-hmm.
Why are funny people funny? Trauma.
Yeah.
Why is she not funny? Trauma. But it's the same. You're expressing the same thing in just opposite ways.
So I'm going to bring this up now. I have a suspicion we're going to disagree about this, and I'm not
We've
putting
never
this.
disagreed before.
I'm not putting this on Nana at all. I'm putting it
Okay.
on the director. I think, for me, even though she is giving it, I think the scene is almost ruined for me by the inclusion of the cuts to Cisco eyes rolling and like half seizuring, because the tonal juxtaposition there does not work for me. It brings it to Hoke and
Really?
makes it all red hokey to me, and it sucks because when you compare that feeling I had watching the scene to, and I think it's because you've rendered one of the best characters in the show to like an eye-rolly mess. Avery's making some bold choices that they chose to include in the cut, which I think are too much.
Head trauma.
I think it's too much. He's literally like, and I'm like, yeah, that's too much. Because you're cutting between that and like a really heartfelt performance. It didn't work for me.
Well, I mean, but that is how it looks.
It didn't work for me. I mean, that's at the end of the day, we can disagree, but
Yeah.
half of the show is what I think. So
No, you are here. You are here to
to serve at the behest.
speak when you are spoken to.
But it becomes in stark relief when we get to what I think is I'm spoiling the whole end of the show. What I think is the best scene in the episode, which is the tag at the end. Because when they are both functional in the scene, I think it's beautiful. It's but here it's not working for me. That's what I have.
I need to go back and watch it again. I didn't clock that, but I'll go back and watch it again. Anyway, Bajoran food sucks. So in engineering, they detect a torpedo coming at them. They're able to dodge the first one, but then the second one hits, and they all wait to explode and reach their mortal coil, but then it doesn't. And we go to the engine. That's exactly the face everyone makes.
Yeah.
I've made that face. Then, it turns out it's a dud. It's sticking into the hull in the mess hall in front of Quark and Cromwell. So in Act 4, nobody make the joke. Quark knows he has to defuse the bomb or they're all gonna die. Luckily, Quark's a good lockpick. So in engineering, Worf continues to be a dick to more of the engineers. O'Brien intervenes and says, these are engineers,
hold
not
on, Keith.
bridge officers.
Let's do this.
Yeah. It came
Pretty
out
good, yeah.
pretty much exactly what they said. And I think having it glow was very effective.
Yeah, it's cool. It gives it a little something different. And I think the beat of like, oh no, we didn't get to that beat yet. Did we get to the beat where the Kamarian is like, did I say that right? Is that even close?
No.
Creamery?
Yes. The creamery.
Stone Cold Creamery?
The
Cremalian is, he's like, well, we sold this to them. So like,
Yeah.
I have some insight. Did we get to that part already? Because that's pretty cool.
Not yet, but that's funny.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I'm so glad I
About
could.
cremarians.
Yeah.
Stone cold cremarians. Wow, somebody throw that into AI. I need Stone Cold Steve Austin
An
as an
entrance
alien
with him coming down, drinking
right,
beers as
with an ice cream
with
cone in each hand.
and Cromwell's head in the
Yeah,
makeup.
with an ice cream cone. Cold Stone. All right,
JD's already on it.
JD, the assignment. You know your assignment.
You know what nobody has sent us yet, and I'm still upset. Is I forgot it already. Forget it.
I think I know what you're about to reference, and they have. We just haven't gotten to it.
Oh, could you remind me of what it is? Because I can't. It's on the tip of my tongue, and I came up with it, and I was like, "Oh, this is perfect."
It might be a Star Wars Star Trek crossover.
Yes. Kai Chewbacca.
Yes. Don't worry. We've been doing other stuff. We'll get to it.
Oh, I manifested some brilliance again.
You sure as hell did.
Worf's boot shivs, I thought was the Hall of Famer thus far, but could we have topped it?
Anyway.
Okay, good boss, bad boss. That's where we are.
Good boss, bad boss. Yes. So O'Brien intervenes and says, "These guys are engineers, not bridge officers. You need to chill." Bashir and Dax are now huddled for warmth. They're cold. Bashir tells his fantasy of being trapped with Dax and being forced to bang in a space shuttle. He is such a creep.
This scene, swing
did not age well.
And a miss.
Well, this was such a written by man scene, right? It's not Bashir having that fantasy and being a creepo. We've all been a creep. We've all had that fantasy, right?
Yeah, damsel in distress.
Sure, absolutely. The written by men part is like, oh, I'm a little bit disappointed you don't want me anymore because I liked the attention. I don't know if you've ever met a woman, but they don't enjoy attention from men they don't want attention from. Like it's all like this fantasy, like, oh, I don't like the wolf whistles, but I miss them when they're gone.
Well, I'll go.
Like,
I'll go to the place because that's what I do on the show. I think Terry, as an actress, is uncomfortable with just how bizarre the scene is. I think Siddig is just not good in this scene. I think it's just he overplays that we're cold, and I think he's overdoing it in general. But the dialogue doesn't help him, and ostensibly there are some differences. But this is the scene that we saw Nana and Renee do when she was turning into stone, right? Like the drama, we're about to die, here are my feelings type of scene. We saw done as a master class there, and as basically a Halloween spirit store here.
Spirit of Halloween love story.
Yeah, and it's like when you hold those two against each other, you're like, this is trash. So sorry to say, but this whole scene is just trash for me.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go out and say it.
I don't think I can defend this scene.
Okay, so let's go. Let's move past.
I don't,
and like also the whole thing is shot in this he's like his face is like on her, and you're like, yo, dude, it's weird. I just can't shake. It's weird.
It's time to move on from that dynamic. It didn't work then. It still doesn't work. Nobody misses it. The least of which is Dax. So, anyway. So in engineering, Worf gives the engineers what they need. An open-ended task they can solve creatively. This I understand. They're going to create a one-shot weapon. On the bridge, Kira keeps telling her root fable. This had to be a very long story. Sisko is fading again, and Kira starts panicking. She gives him a stimulant, and she points out that her faith makes him keep her at arm's length, like I said. But she's gonna pray anyway. Which I think this is the scene you're talking about. Him having a seizure, like people have seizures, especially in a situation like this.
I'm not. That's my point. Isn't that people don't have seizures? It just.
Are you a seizure denier?
I didn't think that was gonna make me laugh so much. I am. No, CTE is not a thing. I don't know. It just felt hokey. I don't know how to shake it. Could have been my mood. It's often mood dependent, Yeah, but I did watch it twice because I went back to get screens. So.
Oh well, there you go. Anyway, the weapon is ready in engineering, and Worf is pleased.
Nerds!
Way to go, nerds! They know that the Jem Hadar is stalking them, and then we see the Jem Hadar ship emerge out of the mist, which I thought looked pretty good. I think switching to CGI actually does help here. So in Act 5,
and I imagine at the time CGI was, though cheaper, still expensive, and so it makes sense to bottle episode it if you're gonna, and then spend the excess on some good ship stuff.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely. I mean, today it's so cheap, but CGI. What it is? It's like flat screen TVs, right? When they first came out, they were so much better, but they cost like $10,000 for a 45-inch TV. Now it's cheaper than TVs have ever been.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can get a TV for way cheaper than you could in the 90s. And I think CGI was the same way. It was like, this is better, but oh my God, is it more expensive? Today, it's like nothing. It's just doing it on your iPhone. And soon with AI, it's just not going to exist at all. So,
but everything was still being done. The post work, that's the thing. So the CG was done separately, but then like, how did the post work happen? Because they were shooting digital, right?
No,
they were still shooting film, right?
Yes. Well, this is why we don't have a high def Deep Space Nine yet. This is exactly why. And nerds out there know this already, but this is good for Mike. The show was shot on 35 millimeter. So at absolute cinema quality, it's fantastic.
24 frames then.
I think 30.
Well, aired at 30.
It's 30 or 24. It aired at 30. I don't probably.
If you're shooting 35, you probably shot 24 frames. Would be my guess.
I don't know. That I don't know. But
I can tell you the raw files that I have after the AI and upscales are all 24 frames, which tells me the source was 24.
Interesting.
Theoretically.
So the problem is, they shot it all at this incredible, great, beautiful resolution. Then they dumped it onto video, and they edited all the special effects on video.
Oh,
so even though the film is amazing, but all the digital effects, all the anything digital was done at 480, so that you can go back and rescan the film, but all of the special effects all the visual effects would have to be completely redone in order to do, which is what they did with Next Gen. And so they went back and redid digitally every single one of the effects, done in the style of the 80s, but every bit of it completely redone. And that's what would be so expensive here.
Yeah, even though AI is getting better, like you can tell in a lot of our screenshots, because I'm pulling from an AI source, like a lot of times, like look at Quark's face here. I mean, that's great. Incredibly detailed, especially compared to when you watch it on Paramount and you're like, ooh. But oftentimes, like when you see the digital effects, it just looks bizarre. Or
they have to go back in. So you basically have to redo an entire series of effects in order to do this, successfully. So it's hard. So that's our obstacle. I think it's still worth doing. I still think they must do it. But that's where it's like, oh, that's a big lift. All right. Anyway. So in Act 5, in the mess hall, Quark has the torpedo open. Cromwell knows that one wire diffuses it and one blows it up. And also he knows that because the Karama sold the Jem Hadar these weapons. And they have a laugh about the Karama guy being so snooty to Quark about how upstanding they are, and they sold them some shoddy merch. And they're starting to lose a little bit.
Also, you're selling weapons to the terrorists of the quadrant, so cool.
Well, but in their world, they're the lead guys. They're not terrorists. They're the government.
Yeah, you're right.
So they're just bad guys. They're just selling to Russian, to the USSR back in the day. So they're going to have to take a gamble, which the Karma, they don't gamble. But Quark's like, hey, 50-50 shot. What the hell? Let's just do it. And Quark does it and guesses. I know
Mike complained about Ben making a snap judgment, and then the episode hinges on coin flip.
50-50.
Which actually aren't terrible odds, I guess.
They're not. I mean, like he said, it's better than Davo. And what choice did they have? They were like about to die, so you might as well take your shot.
I mean, you could have asked someone else's opinion.
Well, they can't get to them. That's the problem. All the bulkheads are down, so they're they're left to their own, and nobody else even knows that they're there with the warhead.
What's the lesson we learn?
The lesson we learn is the value and appeal of gambling.
Okay.
So that was fun, I guess. The lesson was like, that was fun. I don't necessarily know what but you make friends in moments of stress. I think that's really what the message is there.
Okay.
So Cisco on the bridge wakes up to the sound of Kira praying for him. He wants to know the end of the root fable. No, he doesn't. They trick the Jem Hadar out of the clouds and, using their weapon, blow them away with the new gun their engineers created. I feel like they really could have built that up a little bit, built more of the suspense up. Because visually it's awesome. I understand what's happening, but I would love to have the moment where they send out the decoy. They go, "Are you ready to go?" All of which could have been done by cutting the Bashir Dax story, and you could have built up more suspense through this part of it, and it would have been awesome. But they didn't. Yeah. But I still found it satisfying, but I feel like they could have leaned in more to the suspense there.
They just had a lot of plot lines going, and I think they ran out of time.
I think they had one too many plot. I think we both know which one we would cut. Mm-hmm. One too many.
I actually think that the engineer one, for all the joking I was doing, is and their sort of saving of the day, their second saving of the day, is the most interesting plot.
I really liked that. Yeah.
And I thought those nerd guys were pretty good. Actually, I really enjoyed their chemistry and the way they interacted with Worf and O'Brien and their kind of teamwork together. I enjoyed the whole thing.
I identified with them, obviously. We'll talk more about that later.
They gave me a very Lower Decks vibe, even they weren't doing Lower Decks, but they gave me that.
Yeah. We're not the alphas up on the bridge. So they're going to survive, and Cromwell is going to keep working with Quark. Later on the station, Cromwell plays Dabo and beats Quark in front of Odo. Ha! Bashir finds out that Morn has 17 brothers and sisters, while Dax comes up and gives him darts to rescue him from the chatterbox Morn. That beat rang more true because, that's something we've all done. Mm-hmm. But Jillian and I have sort of a protocol when one of us gets trapped talking to one of the neighbors, is that if we there's a certain moment where we'll just call them and say "Oh, I gotta go, I got a thing." Mm-hmm. So
yeah, the save. We all know the save.
The save. We all know the save, right? So Worf is there having a drink with O'Brien, and the engineer comes up and gives him the plan to fix the Defiant, and Worf says, "You know what? Do your thing." Great. So we go to Cisco's office, and Cisco asks Kira if she wants to go to a baseball game, and she's delighted. He gives her a baseball hat and tells her to grab some hot dogs from Quark. And they have now moved forward in their friendship, which I really liked. All right, so that is the episode Starship down. I think it's time to move along home. AlamarEmmys, count to 4. AlamarEmmys,
then one more. AlamarEmmys, AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time.
Mike, I don't know if you do, but I relish these moments when we're briefly off screen, so I can fix my face. I like the bumpers.
Yeah,
just gives me a little moment. Yeah. It's hard to be on camera for 2 hours straight. Shooby dooby, indeed. Why don't you shooby dooby your wormholes?
Well, I talked about the line of succession thing, which Keith clearly let me know that the characters in Deep Space Nine don't matter at all. Really, it turns out. So I guess my big wormhole here, we've gone very long, so I'm gonna just summarize the stakes. They wrote all these plots with really high stakes, really high timelines, or short ticking clocks.
Yes.
And yet none of the performances really, I didn't feel that sense of urgency. It all felt sort of haphazard, lackadaisical in urgency and in decision making. It almost felt like the Quark and Stone Cold Creamery plot line was the whole thing, just meh, at the end of the day, you know what? Whatever. Like, I guess flip the coin. Which, I mean, you could argue is a grand commentary on sort of the chaos of everything we're doing, but I don't think that's the point they're making. So anyway, that's my major wormholes. I just didn't feel the urgency. Nana attempts it at points, but she couldn't even rescue the kind of average overall. So that's really my big takeaways. I didn't feel the driving tension or urgency that I felt they were going for in all of the plot lines, especially in this kind of like I guess crippled submarines just sitting at the bottom of the ocean type of episode. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think in some ways, I think it just is just not being played right. I think other times it's just the professionalism of the people on board. Like, you know, just panicking does not serve anything. This is the military, right? This is what they're trained for, to deal with these crazy situations.
But we love competency porn, but that's not the feeling I got.
Yeah, I do think the larger note on it is this episode is lacking in suspense for what should be an intensely suspenseful episode.
Yeah, it's like almost always the Jem Hadar equal the grand threat, right? The founders, the everything, like every move we make, like every time we've come into the quadrant here, we've had to like cloak up and be quiet and sneak, because risking any exposure to them or conflict has galaxy-wide consequences. Whereas here it feels just like they're the bad guy of the week and they just happen to be tracking us down. It doesn't feel connected as much to the grand threat as usual, which kind of limited that for me.
Yeah, Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but yes, that would have been good. And I wish we had more sneaking around and more like, you know, because we're sort of talking about how we're solving the problem as opposed to watching them solve the problem, which I think is a valid story to tell, and I think is very interesting. But I also really would have liked to seen a little bit more of the process, a little bit more of the sweat on the brow, and just like, let's sneak around and be disabled submarines. Like, that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I commended the episode in the beginning because like our first big, we have an idea, right? That Kira comes up with in conjunction with Dax,
right.
And then guess what? Don't work. I like that. I like when it's like, oh, foiled. Okay, we've got to put our heads together and come up with something better. Foiled. We got to come. That escalating sort of creative problem solving, but we don't really get that. We get the little bit at the end, but like you said, that's sort of underserved. So I felt like there wasn't a lot of problem solving here outside of flip a coin. Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's an episode about emotional problem solving wrapped up in a suspense episode, and I think just the balance of it was a little off.
Yeah.
I love emotional problem solving.
Yeah,
right?
that's not the critique.
And it's like, I just wanted a little bit more of the other side as well.
Well, because it's a little bait and switchy, right? They present you with what in the first couple beats like is going to be a very action oriented.
Oh, it's going to be a white knuckle action thing, and it's not really. All right, let's talk about a best moment, however.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, I think for me the journey of the Cisco and Kira emotional movement here, I think works the best for me, because I think where we get to, we establish in the beginning, it's the most ABC story we see, right? We establish where we are and what the problem with where we are is. We have a middle area where Kira is like verbalizing and acting through her beats and gets to share her emotional turmoil and roadblock with Cisco. And then we get an ending tag where we see that there has been movement forward, right? And we now are in a new emotional relationship space. So for me, of those three parts, the landing was my best moment. I thought that in a very quick, kind of quippy scene, the baseball scene, you got to see all that momentum, all that journey. You got to see not just the new place we're at, but you got to see Kira's relief in recognizing that they're in a new place.
She's delighted.
Delighted, which is not a look we get to see with her often.
No.
Right?
No. And he is too.
Yes. And it has nothing to do with being the emissary. It's just like a fun little...
It broke the ice.
Yeah.
Like it punctured the discomfort between the two of them.
And for me, thusly, it is the best scene, the best moment in the episode.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, I could argue that it's Nana's performance and her sort of like desperation before praying, removing the intercuts for the seizure deniers among us. But I think for me, I guess it's just the idea, right, of how engineers like to work, how a certain type of mind needs to work. Some people really need a rigid structure, follow these tasks. Here's how you do this. Follow these 15 steps and you will get it right every time, and just repeat. And there's a rule book for everything. There's steps for everything, and that you have some boundaries, you have some supervision, you have some structure that's where you are most successful. And that's great. And there's a lot of people work that way, and I think obviously that's a great way to work. And there are the creative problem solvers of the world who need autonomy to be creative and need to be a little bit less supervised and thrive in that environment and feel stifled by the opposite of that. And that is very much me. Tell me the impossible task that needs to happen, get out of the way, and let me figure it out. Right? And let me be creative, and let me try stuff, and let me conceptualize the thing. I don't want to like you hit me with a bunch of rules, I'm going to fail. I'm not going to do well. But give me the task, leave me alone, and I thrive in that environment. And the bosses that I've had that recognize that, and I'll be like, okay, go. I will be your best friggin' employee.
Yeah.
If you try to box me in or that kind of stuff, I'm going to be terrible and you're going to hate me. And that's been true of employers, of teachers, of whatever, because that's how my mind works. So I guess in this way, I work like a Star Trek engineer. That's how my mind works.
I think that, one thing, we talk about the advances in technology and all the different, and you could make an argument for any of those things, but I think one of the greatest things that our advancement in technology and the internet and has brought about is the ability of remote work. Now, I think that the pandemic, and I will never attribute positives to the pandemic, right? It was a terrible loss of life and a terrible moment for us. But it did force the hand of corporations to acknowledge, and coming out of the pandemic as well, acknowledge that for some individuals, right, the work-life balance, the autonomy, the ability to work at your own pace from your own location is a game changer. I, like you, Keith, am one of those people. I always thought, just like I did in school, because nobody identified my learning challenges or anything, that there was one way you did things, right? In the corporate world, there's one way you do things. Look, you and I both temped plenty when we were trying to make ends meet in New York.
Sure.
And as a temp, the expectations are static, right? You clock in at this time, you leave at this time, you do this, you do that. And every temp job, not that I'm not good at it, I want to strangle myself because I can't work in that box. I can't do it. It's not that I'm lazy. It's not that I don't want to. It's I'm mentally incapable of doing that. I need the wheels taken off, and I've succeeded in my last couple of jobs because, like you said, those opportunities have been created. And you're right, it's translated very well in this environment. It's a little focused more on Worf, right? It's more their story, but they kind of put it through with the Worf lens, like what's Worf learning here. But I think you're right. I think the story is told really well from two actors who don't have a lot of lines. I really enjoyed them. Yeah. Well, and you don't, like, this does not apply to everybody. No. Some people do not work this way, but for the people who do, I mean, I've been at the same job for 14 years now, and a great measure of I don't get paid very well, but I get paid in autonomy. Yeah. I get paid in trust, and my boss knows
that I'm going to get the important task done every week. Guaranteed. I'm going to do it well. And he couldn't care less at what hour do I do it?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I in the world? What am I doing? Couldn't care less. Get the job done. I'll do it. Just leave me alone. Let me do my thing. It'll be awesome. You'll be so glad because I'm going to do it better. I'm going to come up with ways to make it better. Anyway.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you find a boss who just wants the thing done and doesn't want to have to babysit you, and when you can prove that you can do that for a person, you earn yourself some good.
And that's and I have a level of trust with my boss, and we're friends, and like, and both of us work the same way, so couldn't care less. Like. It's always been like, hey, are you working today? What are you doing? If he has a question.
Me and Matt have my colleague. I work on a very small team, and I like it that way. We've both been offered promotions into different types of management, and we're always like, no, man, I wouldn't trade this the way we work for anything. But we have this big thing because a lot of companies now they want, if you're working remote, like you need these meetings, and yes, there are sometimes you need teamwork and you need to collaborate. I understand that, but Matt and I are always like, can it be an email? Can this meeting that we're going to waste an hour on be an email? Because if so, write the email. Okay, Keith, you know what we should do?
Before people start asking, could this podcast be an email? Let us hand out some self-sealing stem bolts.
Oh, I didn't do it for this one.
Here are some stem
bolts! Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, they are self-sealing! I'm not going to do the big high one. There we go.
We did get the key.
Yeah, well, we've listened to it a few times. All right, go.
Keith, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. Yeah. I think I like this episode. I enjoy watching this episode. It is always welcome to come up on my feed. I think that looking at it with a little bit more scrutiny, I think there are some pieces of it that could have been better. However, with the exception of the Dax Bashir beat, I think each of the stories that we're telling, because, as I've said many times, Deep Space Nine is a whole bunch of duets, right? And I think the Quark Coldstone Creamery, I think that's successful. I think Cisco Kira, successful. Worf, O'Brien, and the engineers, successful. And I think they all have something interesting to say, all something a little bit different. I thought the visuals were great. The transition to digital looks pretty darn good, way better than it has any right to in 1995. And I think the basic structure of the submarine battle is really strong. I think it just needed to build suspense in each of those beats, but all of those beats individually, I think they're logical, they make sense. It's a compelling arc to that. But is it one of those it's good, but it's not great. It could have been great, but it's not. It's good. And so for me, you get 81 self-sealing stem bolts.
Okay, I thought you were a little higher on it, actually. To your points, if we look at it as a series of duets, I would say that there are really, of the three plot lines, for me, I think we both agree the Bashir and Dax thing is a waste. We don't move anywhere, we don't move any forward. In fact, the couple of places, I guess the tag is okay, right? In fact, if you did a ratio comparison of the stakes of Bashir save of her, because he did save her life.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Versus the gulf between that save and what she says, now we're even. The gulf, but you're right, I know it's a joke, but the gulf between those is how much I dislike it. Okay, so I'll just say that.
Fair enough.
The Stone Cold Creamery thing, for me, it's a miss because I thought it was going to be a sort of, well, actually, reframing it, I thought it was going to be a takedown of both of their ways of showing that, it's altruism versus, altruistic socialism, whatever you want to call the one guy's philosophy. I can't say their race name, so forget it. And Quark's
Cremalians. Stone cold Cremalians.
But ultimately, I think it's basically just pointing out the hypocrisy of just hypocrisy, right? It's saying, you know, he's so altruistic, but then at the end of the day, yeah, well, we sold them a bunch of BS, and it's. But then the gambling thing is kind of like, well, it's not effective. Cromwell's great, they're great, but the story is not. It's not.
Well, I think that it's that there are both they're both benefits and liabilities to either extreme of business, and that what both of them needs is a little piece of je ne sais quoi of the gamble, of a little spice to make it make it fun.
Well, then our effort to tell that story is, I think, not effective enough to justify what we lose in the other plots in time to build, because the A plot is pretty effective. Well, the A-ish plots, where the sort of grand problem we're in, which I thought was going to be the best part of the episode, like, oh, we're Starship down, and now all the systems are disabled. How are we going to get out of this? Is actually just the setting, right? Yeah, that's actually just the setting for the little duets to play upon. When I kind of wanted that to be the story, because the two engineers who are trying to figure stuff out which is, I guess, part of the Worf plot, but is really what I think is the most interesting plot. That wasn't given enough time to simmer and to execute, and so it like has the least satisfying ending, but the best.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think none of it had enough time.
None of it had enough time.
Because we tried to fit 5 stories. We have the ship, we have Sisko and Kira, we have Coldstone Cremalian, we have Worf and the engineers, and then we have Dax and Bashir.
Dax and Bashir. You're right, it's 5.
So we have 5 stories happening at once, so they all feel a little undercooked.
Yeah. They try to give them all 25% of time, but there's not enough time.
Because 5 times 25 is more than 100.
And the Dax and Sisko's story, which I think is the most fleshed out fully, is sort of hamstrung by its middle part is sort of forced upon it by like taking out one of our best characters, which you want Sisko in this episode. You just want Sisko in this episode, helping make decisions, whatnot. Like, it's hard to be a duet when one of the first people has a concussion and is unconscious. Like, that's hard to duet that scene. You know what I mean? And yes, I know I made a big deal about the hokiness and whatnot, and I stand by that. But really, my critique of it is that it's just more effective if they're having a conversation, if Ben is part of it, right? And he's not. And so that's really my critique of it. So ultimately, I'm less critical than I was in my initial run-through. My initial run-through, I was like laughing at it. I just thought it was just hokey. I've seen some benefits out of it, but I still just don't think it's strong. And unfortunately, you can't look at it outside of the juggernaut that is season 4 so far. And for me, like I said, it just felt like a bottle episode in a season so far that has such grand stakes and such a connection to the whole thing that the bottle episode feels a little weak because of it. So if I'm being high when I'm high, I gotta be honest here, and I'm not gonna kill it, because it's the performances. You can't. I mean, when Nana's nanaing, how are you gonna? And Cromwell,
definitely not gonna be nodding off.
Yeah, I mean, Cromwell's here. I mean, that'll do, Pig, but it won't do quite enough. 73 self-sealing stem bolts.
Okay, well, folks, I want to know, how many stem bolts does it get for you?
Yeah.
Which professional wrestler would you have fight OJ? Lots of questions for you out there. You can leave a comment down below here on the YouTubes. Are they Windows? Are they not Windows? Are there any other corrections you can shout at us? All right, so this episode came in at a 7.7 on IMDb, which ranks it number 70 out of 173 episodes of Deep Space Nine. Next week, I like this one. This one's going to be fun. We're going to do Little Green Men. Look out. Can't wait to talk about it. So we will see you back here next week. If you haven't already, check out some of our other nonsense. We do K&M Geekly. We do look at my Star Trek toys. We have to record some. If we don't get the phaser in time, or the communicator in time, we're going to have to go into our deep bench of phenomenal custom action figures. You don't want to miss it. All right, so we thank you so much for watching. All of our socials are in all of our social places. Till then, this has been Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our particular brand of nonsense, please like and subscribe. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.